Blessed love and peace. This is the recitation of Tobadiko Kadao, Torah Bhagavad Gita, Digha Nikaya Dhammapada Gospels, Quran, and Tao Te Ching. Portion numero 8, which is Vayishlach. That includes from Torah, Parsha Vayishlach, which is Bereshit 32, 4 a 36, 43, from the Chandogya Upanishads, Kanda 1, 8 a 9. From the Bhagavad Gita, it is the Akshara Brahma Yogahe, 8. From the Tao Te Ching, it is chapter Ba, 8. Approximate pronunciation from the Mandarin. And from Lun Yu, it is also chapter 8. From the Digha Nikaya, it is the Kudadanta Sutta numero 5. And from the Dhammapada, it is the Sahasa Vaga numero 8. From the Gospels, it is Matthew chapters 15 a 16. And from the Quran, it is Surah Al-Anfal, which is numero 8. And from the Gayana Shagoa, it is articles 42 a 65. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahu Abham. Dao ka dao, fe chong dao, ming ka ming, fe chong ming. Ja Rastafari. Deus noster qui es in cele sanctificato nomen tuum. Vaheguru Satnam. Baruch ata Elohim Eloheinu melech olam, borei peri hagafem. Amen. Baruch ata Elohim Eloheinu melech olam, asher kitzanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'sok b'dvar Torah. Amen. Kyrie eleison. Seva mastu save jikatehem. Save sata bhavantu sukhitata. Vagabiyam. Akwaba upendona amani. Fikiri in the salami. Chinta dan beramin. Lebovamiam. Womanjika. Ubuntu. Shabono fakithka. Shishe. Kamosanida. Domo arigato. Pelama yelo wakantoko. Tok odokushin good. Go menagan. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata jamya yata afanami. Mado. Aho, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen. From Torah, Vayishlach. Yaakov sent angels ahead of him to his brother Esau, to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, So shall you say to my master, to Esau, Thus said your servant Yaakov, I have sojourned with Laban, and I have tarried until now. And I have acquired oxen and donkeys, flocks, manservants and maidservants, and I have sent to tell this to my master. I have sent to tell this to my master, to find favor in your eyes. The angels returned to Yaakov, saying, We came to your brother to Esau, and he is also coming towards you, and 400 men are with him. Yaakov became very frightened and was distressed, so he divided the people who were with him and the flocks and the cattle and the camels into 2 camps. And he said, If Esau comes to one camp and strikes it down, the remaining camp will escape. And Yaakov said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Yitzhak, Elohim, who said to me, Return to your land and to your birthplace, and I will do benevolence to you. I have become small from all the kindnesses and from all the truth that you have rendered your servant. For with my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 camps. Now deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I am afraid of him, lest he come and strike me, and strike a more with children. And you said, I will surely do benevolence with you, and I will make your seed as numerous as the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted because of multitude. So he lodged there on that night, and he took from what came into his hand a gift for his brother Esau, 200 she-goats, 20 he-goats, 200 ewes, and 20 rams, 30 nursing camels and their young, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 she-donkeys and 10 he-donkeys. And he gave into the hands of his servants each herd individually. And he said to his servants, Pass on ahead of me and make a space between one herd and another herd. And he commanded the first one, saying, when my brother Esau meets you and asks you, saying, to whom do you belong, and where are you going, and for whom are these before you? You shall say, I belong to your servant Yaakov. It is a gift sent to my master, to Esau, and behold, he himself is behind us. And he commanded also the second one, also the third one, and also those who follow the herd, saying, in this manner shall you speak to Esau when you meet him. And you shall say, also, behold, your servant Yaakov is behind us. For he said, I will appease his anger with the gift that is going before me, and afterwards I will see his face, perhaps he will favor me. So the gift passed on before him, and he lodged that night in the camp. And he arose during that night, and he took his 2 wives, and his 2 maidservants, and his 11 children, and he crossed the ford of the Yabok, and he took them and brought them across the stream, and he took across what was his. And Yaakov was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. When he saw that he could not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Yaakov's hip became dislocated as he wrestled with him. And he, the angel, said, let me go, for dawn is breaking. But he, Yaakov, said, I will not let you go unless you have blessed me. So he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Yaakov. And he said, your name shall no longer be called Yaakov, but Israel, because you have commanding power with an angel of God and with men, and you have prevailed. And Yaakov asked him and said, now tell me your name. And he said, why is it that you ask for my name? And he blessed him there. And Yaakov named the place Peniel, for he said, I saw an angel face to face, and my soul was saved. And the soul rose for him when he passed Penuel, and he was limping on his thigh. Therefore the children of Israel may not eat the displaced tendon which is on the socket of the hip until this day, for he touched the socket of Yaakov's hip in the hip sinew. Yaakov lifted his eyes and saw, and behold, Esau was coming, and with him were 400 men. So he divided the children with Leah and with Rachel and with the 2 maidservants. And he placed the maidservants and their children first, and Leah and her children after, and Rachel and her Yosef last. And he went ahead of them and prostrated himself to the ground 7 times until he came closer to his brother. And Esau ran towards him and embraced him, and he fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted his eyes and saw the women and the children, and he said, who are these to you? And he said, the children with whom God has favored your servant. And the maidservants and their children drew near and prostrated themselves. And Leah and her children drew near and prostrated themselves. And after them Yosef and Rachel drew near and prostrated themselves. And he said, what is to you the purpose of all this camp I have met? And he said, to find favor in my master's eyes. But Esau said, I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have remain yours. Thereupon Yaakov said, please no. If indeed I have found favor in your eyes, then you shall take my gift from my hand, because I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of an angel, and you have accepted me. Now take my gift which has been brought to you, for God has favored me with it, and because I have everything. He prevailed upon him, and he took it. Thereupon he said, travel, and we will go, and I will go alongside you. And he said to him, my master knows that the children are tender, and the flocks and the cattle, which are raising their young, depend upon me. And if they override them one day, all the flocks will die. Now let my master go ahead before his servant, and I will move at my own slow pace, according to the pace of the work that is before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my master to Seir. Thereupon Esau said, let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. But he said, why do that? May I find favor in my master's eyes? So Esau returned on that day on his way to Seir. And Yaakov traveled to Sukkot, and built himself a house for his cattle. He made booths, therefore he named the place Sukkot. And Yaakov came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Padan Aram, and he encamped before the city. And he bought the part of the field where he had pitched his tent from the sons of Hamor, the far of Shechem, for 100 kesitas. There he erected an altar, and he named it, God is the God of Israel. Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Yaakov, went out to look about amongst the daughters of the land. And Shechem saw the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, and he took her, lay with her, and violated her. And his soul cleaved to Dinah, the daughter of Yaakov. He loved the girl, and spoke to the girl's heart. And Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, take this girl for me as a wife. Yaakov had heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. And Yaakov kept silent until they came home. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Yaakov to speak with him. And Yaakov's sons had come from the field when they heard, and the men were grieved, and they burned fiercely, because he had committed a scandalous act in Israel to lie with the daughter of Yaakov, and such ought not to be done. And Hamor spoke with them, saying, my son Shechem His soul has a liking for your daughter. Please give her to him for a wife, and intermarry with us, and you shall give us your daughters, and you shall take our daughters for yourselves. And you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Remain, do business there, and settle there. And Shechem said to her father and to her brothers, May I find favor in your eyes. Whatever you tell me, I will give. Impose upon me a large marriage settlement and gifts, and I will give as much as you ask of me, but give me the girl for a wife. Thereupon Yaakov's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with cunning, and they spoke because after all he had defiled their sister Dinah. And they said to them, We cannot do this thing to give our sister to a man who has a foreskin, for that is a disgrace to us. But with this, however, we will consent to you, if you will be like us, that every male will be circumcised. Then we will give you our daughters, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. But if you do not listen to us to be circumcised, we will take our daughter and go. Their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, the son of Hamor. And the young man did not delay to do the thing because he desired Yaakov's daughter, and he was the most honored in all his father's household. And Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city, and they spoke to the people of their city, saying, These men are peaceful with us, and they will dwell in the land and do business there. And the land, behold, it is spacious enough for them. We will take their daughters for ourselves as wives, and we will give them our daughters. However, only with this condition will the men consent to dwell with us, to become one people, by every male amongst us being circumcised, just as they are circumcised. Then shall not their cattle, their property, and all their beasts be ours, but let us consent to them, and they will dwell with us. And all those coming out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male, all who went out of the gate of his city, became circumcised. Now it came to pass on the third day, when they were in pain, that Yaakov's two sons, Shimon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword, and they came upon the city with confidence, and they slew every male. And Hamor and his son Shechem they slew with the edge of the sword, and they took Dinah and out of Shechem's house and left. Yaakov's sons came upon the slain and plundered the city that had defiled their sister. Their flocks and their cattle and their donkeys and whatever was in the city and whatever was in the field they took. And all their wealth and all their infants and their wives they captured and plundered, and all that was in the house. Thereupon Yaakov said to Shimon and to Levi, You have troubled me to discredit me amongst the inhabitants of the land, amongst the Canaanites and amongst the Perizzites. And I am few in number, and they will gather against me, and I and my household will be destroyed. And they said, Shall he make our sister like a harlot? And Elohim said to Yaakov, Arise and go up to Bethel and abide there, and make there an altar to Elohim who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau. Thereupon Yaakov said to his household and to all those who were with him, Remove the deities of the foreign nations which are in your midst, purify yourselves and change your clothes. And we will arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make an altar to Elohim who answered me on the day of my distress, and was with me on the way that I went. And they gave Yaakov all the deities of the nations that were in their possession, and the earrings that were in their ears, and Yaakov hid them under the terebinth that was near Shechem. Then they traveled, and the fear of Elohim was upon the cities that were around them, so they did not pursue Yaakov's sons. And Yaakov came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan, that is Bethel, and he and all the people who were with him. He built there an altar, and he called the place at El Bethel, for there Elohim had been revealed to him when he fled from before his brother Esau. And Devorah, Rivka's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel, beneath the plain, so he named it Alon Bachut. And Elohim appeared again to Yaakov when he came from Padan Aram, and Elohim blessed him. Elohim said to him, Your name is Yaakov, your name shall no longer be called Yaakov, but Israel shall be your name. And Elohim named him Israel. And Elohim said to him, I am the Almighty God, be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a multitude of nations shall come into existence from you, and kings shall come forth from your loins. And the land that I gave to Abraham and to Yitzhak I will give to you, and to your seed after you will I give the land. And Elohim went up from him in the place where Elohim had spoken with him. Now Yaakov had erected a monument in the place where Elohim had spoken with him, a stone monument, and he poured libation upon it, and then he poured oil upon it. Yaakov named the place where Elohim had spoken with him Bethel. And they journeyed from Bethel, and there was still some distance to come to Ephrath, and Rachel gave birth, and her labor was difficult. It came to pass, when she had difficulty giving birth, that the midwife said to her, Do not be afraid, for this one too is a son for you. And it came to pass, when her soul departed, for she died, that she named him Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died, and she was buried on the road to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. And Yaakov erected a monument on her grave, that is the tombstone of Rachel unto this day. Israel journeyed, and he pitched his tent at some distance past the tower of Eder. And it came to pass, when Israel sojourned in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah his father's concubine. And Israel heard of it, and so the sons of Yaakov were 12. The sons of Leah were Reuben, Yaakov's firstborn, and Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, Dan and Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's maidservant, Gad and Asher. These are Yaakov's sons who were born to him in Padan Aram. And Yaakov came to his father Yitzhak to Mamre, Kiriat Arba, which is Hebron, where Abraham and Yitzhak dwelt. The days of Yitzhak were 180 years. And Yitzhak expired and died, and was gathered into his peoples, old and sated with days. And his sons Esau and Yaakov buried him. And these are the generations of Esau, that is Edom. Esau took his wives from the daughters of Canaan: Adah, daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Oholibama, daughter of Anna, daughter of Zibeon the Hivite. Also Basemat, daughter of Ishmael, sister of Nebaiot. Adah bore Eliphaz to Esau, and Basemat bore Reuel. Oholibama bore Yeush and Yalam and Korah. These are the sons of Esau who were born to him in the land of Canaan. And Esau took his wives, his sons, and his daughters, and all the people of his household, and his cattle, and all his animals, and all his property that he had acquired in the land of Canaan, and he went to another land because of his brother Yaakov. For their possessions were too numerous for them to dwell together, and the land of their sojournings could not support them because of their livestock. So Esau dwelt on Mount Seir, Esau, that is Edom. And these are the generations of Esau, the progenitor of Edom, on Mount Seir. These are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz, son of Adah, the wife of Asa; Reuel, son of Basemat, the wife of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kanaz. And Timnah was a concubine to Eliphaz, son of Esau, and she bore to Eliphaz Amalek. These are the sons of Adah, the wife of Esau. And these are the sons of Reuel, Nahat, Zerah, Tashama, and Mizah. These are the sons of Basemat, the wife of Esau. And these are the sons of Oholibama, daughter of Anah, daughter of Zibeon, the wife of Esau. She bore to Esau Yeush, Yalam, and Korah. These became the chieftains of the sons of Esau, the sons of Eliphaz, Esau's firstborn: Chief Teman, Chief Omar, Chief Zepho, Chief Kanaz, Chief Korah, Chief Gatam, Chief Amalek. These are the chieftains of Eliphaz in the land of Adam. These are the sons of Adah. And these are the sons of Reuel, the son of Esau: Chief Nahat, Chief Zerah, Chief Shammah, and Chief Mizah. These are the chieftains of Reuel in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Basemat, the wife of Esau. And these are the sons of Oholibama, the wife of Esau: Chief Yeush, Chief Yalam, Chief Korah. These are the chieftains of Oholibama, daughter of Anah, the wife of Esau. These are the sons of Esau, and these are their chieftains. He is Edom. These are the sons of Seir, the Horite, the inhabitants of the land: Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, and Anah, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan. These are the chieftains of the Horites, the sons of Seir in the land of Edom. The sons of Lotan were Hori and Hemam, and the sister of Lotan was Timnah. And these are the sons of Shobal: Alvan, Manahat, and Ebal, Shepho, and Onam. And these are the sons of Zibeon: Eah and Anna. He is Anna who found the mules in the wilderness when he pastured the donkeys for his father Zibeon. And these are the sons of Anah: Dishon and Oholibama, the daughter of Anah. And these are the sons of Dishan: Hemdan, Eshban, Itran, and Cheron. These are the sons of Ezer: Bilhan, Zavan, and Akan. These are the sons of Dishan: Uz and Aran. These are the chieftains of the Horites: Chief Lotan, Chief Shobal, Chief Zibeon, and Chief Lotan, Chief Shobal, Chief Zibeon, Chief Anah, Chief Dishon, Chief Ezer, and Chief Dishan. These are the chieftains of the Horites according to their chieftains in the land of Edom. And these are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the children of Israel. Bela, son of Beor, reigned in Edom, and the name of his city was Dinhabah. Bela died, and Yobab, son of Zerah of Bozrah, reigned in his stead. And Yobab died, and Husham of the land of the Temanites reigned in his stead. Husham died, and Hadad, son of Bedad, who defeated Midian in the field of Moab, reigned in his stead. The name of his city was Avit. Hadad died, and Simla, of Masrekah reigned in his stead. Samlah died, and Saul of Rehoboth by the river reigned in his stead. Saul died, and Baal-Hanan son of Achbor reigned in his stead. Baal-Hanan son of Achbor died, and Hadar reigned in his stead. The name of his city was Pau. His wife's name was Mehetabel, daughter of Matred, the daughter of Me-Zahab. And these are the names of the chieftains of Esau, according to their clans, according to their places, by their names: Chief Timnah, Chief Alva, Chief Yetet, Chief Oholibamah, Chief Elah, Chief Penon, Chief Kanaz, Chief Taman, Chief Mibzar, Chief Magdiel, Chief Iram. These are the chieftains of Edom, according to their dwelling places in the land of their possession, that is Esau, progenitor of the Edomites. Chandogya Upanishads, Kanda 1, 8 a 9. There are 3 men versed in the Udgita: Selaka, the son of Salavat, Chekitayana of the line of Dalbia, and Pravahana, the son of Jivala. They said, "We are indeed versed in the Udgita. Let us have a discussion of the Udgita." "Let it be so," they said, and sat down. Then Pravahana, the son of Javala, said, "Revered sirs, you speak first, and I shall listen to what the 2 Brahmins have to say." Then Silaka, the son of Salavat, said to Chekitayana of the line of Dalbia, "Well, may I question you?" "Do ask," he said. "What is the support of the Saman?" "Tone, Svara," he replied. "What is the support of tone?" "The prana, vital breath," he replied. "What is the support of the prana?" "Food," he replied. "What is the support of food?" "Water," he replied. "What is the support of water?" "Yonder world heaven," he replied. "What is the support of yonder world?" "Let no one carry the Saman beyond the heavenly world. We place the Saman in the heavenly world, for the Saman is honored as heaven." Then Salaka, the son of Salavat, said to Chekitayana of the line of Dalbia, "O Dalbia, your Saman is not firmly established. If at this time anyone who knew the support of the Saman were to say, 'Your head shall fall off,' surely your head would fall off." "Well, then, revered sir, let me learn it from you," said Chekitayana. "Learn it," replied Silaka. "What is the support of that world?" "This world," he replied. "What is the support of this world?" "Let no one carry the Saman beyond this world, which is its support. We place the Saman in this world as its support, for the Saman is honored as the support, this world." Then said Pravahana, the son of Javala, "O son of Salavat, your Saman, this earth, has an end. If at this time anyone who knew the support of the Saman were to say, 'Your head shall fall off,' surely your head would fall off." "Well then, let me learn this from you, revered sir," said Salaka. "Learn it," said Pravahana. "What is the support of this world?" asked Salaka. "The Akasha," said Pravahana, "for all these beings are created from the Akasha and return to the Akasha. The Akasha is greater than these, therefore the Akasha is the supreme support. This is the Udgita Om, the most excellent, this is endless. He who, knowing this, meditates on the Udgita obtains the most excellent life and wins the most excellent worlds." Atidanvan, the son of Sunaka, having taught this Udgita to Udara Sandilya, said, "As long as any of your descendants know this Udgita, their life shall be the most excellent in this world, and likewise in the other world. He who knows the Udgita and meditates on it, his life shall be the most excellent in this world, and likewise in the other world, yea, in the other world." Bhagavad Gita, Yakshara Brahma Yogahe. Arjuna says, "What is Brahman? What is the individual soul? And what is action, O Supreme Person? What is it that is said to underlie all the elements? And what is it that is said to underlie all the angels? And who, O Madhusudana, sustains all the offerings here in the body? And in what way? And how again are you to be known at the time of death by those who have practiced self-control?" Sri Krishna says, "Brahman is the imperishable, the supreme. Dwelling in each body, Brahman is called the individual soul. The offering of the oblation which brings into existence all beings and supports them is called action. That which underlies all the elements is the perishable entity, and that which underlies all the angels is the Purusha, the cosmic spirit. And Brahman, who sustains all the offerings, is myself here in the body, O best of men. And whoso at the time of death leaves his body remembering me alone and goes forth, he attains my being. Concerning this there is no doubt. For whatever object a man thinks of at the final moment when he leaves his body, that alone does he attain, O son of Kunti, being ever absorbed in the thought thereof. Therefore at all times constantly remember me and fight. With your mind and understanding absorbed in me, you will surely come to me. Engaged in the yoga of constant practice and not allowing the mind to wander away to anything else, he who meditates on the supreme resplendent Purusha reaches Brahman, O son of Prita. He who at the time of passing away, steady in mind, filled with love and armed with the strength of yoga, well fixes his prana between his brows and meditates on the omniscient and primal being, the ruler, the dispenser of all, who is subtler than an atom, whose form is beyond comprehension, and who, like the glorious soleil, is beyond all darkness. He who thus meditates reaches the resplendent supreme person. I will now briefly describe to you that state which those who know the Vedas call the imperishable, and into which enter the sannyasis, self-controlled and freed from attachment, and in desire for which seekers lead the life of continence. He who closes all the doors of the senses, confines the mind within the heart, draws the prana into the head, and engages in the practice of yoga, uttering Om, the single syllable denoting Brahman, and meditates on me, he who so departs leaving the body attains the supreme goal. I am easy of access to that ever steadfast yogi who, O Partha, constantly meditates on me and gives no thought to anything else. Having come to me, these high-souled men are no further subject to rebirth, which is transitory and the abode of pain, for they have reached the highest perfection. The dwellers in all the worlds from the realm of Brahma downward are subject to rebirth, O Arjuna, but for those who reach me, O son of Kunti, there is no further return to embodiment. Those who know that the day of Brahma lasts 1,000 eons and that the night of Brahma lasts 1,000 eons again are indeed the people who know day and night. At the approach of the day, all manifest objects come forth from the unmanifested, and at the approach of the night, they merge again into that which is called the unmanifested. The same multitude of beings, coming forth again and again, merge in spite of themselves, O Partha, at the approach of the day, and remain steadfast, and remain themselves at the approach of the day. But beyond this unmanifested, there is yet another unmanifested eternal being, who does not perish when all beings perish. This unmanifested is called the imperishable. It is said to be the ultimate goal, from which those who reach it never come back. That is my supreme abode. That supreme Purusha, in whom all beings abide and by whom the entire universe is pervaded, can be attained, O Partha, by whole-souled devotion directed to Brahman alone. Now I will tell you, O greatest of the Bharatas, the time in which the yogis depart never to return, and also the time in which they depart to return. Fire, light, daytime, the bright half of the moon, and the 6 months of the northward passage of the soleil. Taking this path, the knowers of Brahman go to Brahman. Smoke, night, the dark half of the moon, and the 6 months of the southward passage of the soleil. Taking this path, the yogi reaches the lunar path and thence returns. These two paths, the bright and the dark, are deemed to be the world's eternal paths. Following the one, a man does not come back, and following the other, he is reborn. No yogi who understands these two paths is ever deluded. Therefore, O Arjuna, at all times be steadfast in yoga. The yogi who knows this transcends all the rewards laid down for the study of the Vedas, for offerings, for austerities, for making gifts. He reaches the supreme primal abode. Tao Te Ching. Número 8. The highest benevolence resembles water. Water greatly benefits myriad things without contention. It stays in places that people dislike. Therefore it is similar to the Tao. Dwelling with the right location, feeling with great depth, giving with great kindness, speaking with great integrity, governing with great administration, handling with great capability, moving with great timing. Because it does not contend, it is therefore beyond reproach. Lunyu número 8. The master says, surely Taipo can be said to be of the highest virtue. 3 times he abdicated his right to rule over the empire, and yet he left behind nothing the common people could acclaim. The Master says, unless a man has the spirit of the rights, in being respectful he will not. Unless a man has the spirit of the rights, in being respectful he will wear himself out. In being careful he will be timid. He will become timid. In having courage he will become unruly, and in being forthright he will become intolerant. When the gentleman feels profound affection for his parents, the common people will be stirred to benevolence. When he does not forget friends of long standing, the common people will not shirk their obligations to other people. When he was seriously ill, Tsang Tu summoned his disciples and said, take a look at my hands, take a look at my feet. The odes say in fear and trembling, as if approaching a deep abyss, as if walking on thin ice. Only now I am sure of being spared, my young friends. Tsang Tu was seriously ill. When Meng Qing Tu visited him, this is what Tsang Tu says. Sad is the cry of a dying bird. Benevolent are the words of a dying man. There are 3 things which the gentleman values most in the way: to stay clear of violence by putting on a serious countenance, to come close to being trusted by setting a proper expression on his face, and to avoid being boorish and unreasonable by speaking in proper tones. As for the business of offertory vessels, there are officials responsible for that. Tsang Tu says, to be able yet to ask the advice of those who are not able, to have many talents yet to ask the advice of those who have few, to have yet to appear to want, to be full yet to appear empty, to be transgressed against yet not to mind. It was towards this end that my friend used to direct his efforts. Tsang Tu says, if a man can be entrusted with an orphan 6 chi tall, and the fate of a state 100 li square, without his being deflected from his purpose even in moments of crisis, is he not a gentleman? He is indeed a gentleman. Tsang Tu says, a gentleman must be strong and resolute, for his burden is heavy and the road is long. He takes benevolence as his burden. Is that not heavy? Only with death does the road come to an end. Is that not long? The Master says, be stimulated by the odes, take your stand on the rights, and be perfected by music. The Master says, the common people can be made to follow a path, but not to understand it. The Master says, being fond of courage whilst detesting poverty will lead men to unruly behavior. Excessive detestation of men who are not benevolent will provoke them to unruly behavior. The Master says, even with a man as gifted as the Duke of Chao, if he was arrogant and miserly, then the rest of his qualities would not be worthy of admiration. The Master says, it is not easy to find a man who can study for 3 years without thinking about earning a salary. The Master says, have the firm faith to devote yourself to learning and abide to the death in the benevolent way. Enter not a state that is in peril, stay not in a state that is in danger. So show yourself when the way prevails in the empire, but hide yourself when it does not. It is a shameful matter to be poor and humble when the way prevails in the state. Equally, it is a shameful matter to be rich and noble when the way falls into disuse in the state. The Master says, do not concern yourself with matters of government unless they are the responsibility of your office. The Master says, when Qi, the master musician, begins to play, and when the Chong Chi comes to its end, how the sound fills the ear. The Master says, men who reject discipline and yet are not straight, men who are ignorant and yet not cautious, men who are devoid of ability and yet not trustworthy are quite beyond my understanding. The Master says, even with a man who urges himself on in his studies, as though he was losing ground, my fear is still that he may not make it in time. The Master says, how lofty Shun and Yu were in holding aloof from the empire when they were in possession of it. The Master says, great indeed was Yao as a ruler. How lofty! It is heaven that is great, and it was Yao who modeled himself upon it. He was so boundless that the common people were not able to put a name to his virtues. Lofty was he in his successes, and brilliant was he in his accomplishments. Shun had 5 officials and the empire was well governed. King Wu says, I have 10 capable officials. Kong Fuzi comments, How true it is that talent is difficult to find. The period of Tong and Yu was rich in talent. With a woman amongst them, there were in fact only 9. The Chao continued to serve the Yin when it was in possession of 2/3 of the empire. Its virtue can be said to have been the highest. The master says, with Yu I can find no fault. He ate and drank the meanest fare whilst making offerings to ancestral spirits and angels with the utmost devotion proper to a descendant. He wore coarse clothes whilst sparing no splendor in his robes and caps on offertory occasions. He lived in lowly dwellings whilst devoting all his energy to the building of irrigation canals. With Yu I can find no fault. From the Digha Nikaya, the Kuttadanta Sutta, numero 5. Thus have I heard. The Blessed One once, when going on a tour through Magadha, with a great multitude of the brethren, with about 500 brethren, came to a Brahmin village in Magadha called Kanumata, and there at Kanumata he lodged in the Ambalatika pleasaunce. Now at that time the Brahmin Kuttadanta was dwelling at Kanumata, a place teeming with life, with much grassland and woodland, and water and grain, on a royal domain presented him by Senior Bimbisara, the king of Magadha, as a royal gift, with power over it as if he were the king. And just then a great offering was being got ready on behalf of Kuttadanta the Brahmin, and 100 bulls and 100 steers and 100 heifers and 100 goats and 100 rams had been brought to the post for the offering. Now the Brahmins and householders of Kanumata heard the news of the arrival of the Samana Gautama, and they began to leave Kanumata in companies and in bands to go to the Ambalatika pleasaunce. And just then Kuttadanta the Brahmin had gone apart to the upper terrace of his house for his siesta, and seeing the people thus go by, he asked his doorkeeper the reason, and the doorkeeper told him. Then Kuttadanta thought, I have heard that the Samana Gautama understands about the successful performance of an offering with its threefold method and its 16 accessory instruments. Now I don't know all this, and yet I want to carry out an offering. It will be well for me to go to the Samana Gautama and ask him about it. So he sent his doorkeeper to the Brahmins and householders of Kanumata to ask them to wait till he could go with them to call upon the Blessed One. But there were at that time a number of Brahmins staying at Kanumata, to take part in the great offering, and when they heard this, they went to Kuttadanta and persuaded him on the same grounds as the Brahmins had laid before Sonadanda not to go. But he answered them in the same terms as Sonadanda had utilized to those Brahmins. Then they were satisfied and went with him to call upon the Blessed One. And when he was seated there, Kuttadanta the Brahmin told the Blessed One what he had heard, and requested him to tell him about success in performing an offering in its 3 modes and with its accessory articles of furniture of 16 kinds. Well then, O Brahmin, give ear and listen attentively, and I will speak. Very well, sir, said Kuttadanta in reply, and the Blessed One spake as follows. Long ago, O Brahmin, there was a king by name Wide Realm, Mahavijita, mighty with great wealth and large property, with stores of silver and gold, of aids to enjoyment, of treasures and grain, with his treasure houses and his garners full. Now, when King Wide Realm was once sitting alone in meditation, he became anxious at the thought, I have in abundance all the benevolent things a living being can enjoy. The whole wide circle of the earth is mine by conquest to possess. 'Twere well if I were to offer a great offering that should ensure me weal and welfare for many days. And he had the Brahmin his chaplain called, and telling him all that he had thought, he said, So I would fain, O Brahmin, offer a great offering. Let the Venerable One instruct me how for my weal and my welfare for many days. Thereupon the Brahmin who was chaplain said to the king's countryside is harassed and harried. There are dacoits abroad who pillage the villages and townships, and who make the roads unsafe. Were the king so long as that is so to levy a fresh tax, verily his majesty would be acting wrongly. But perchance his majesty might think, I'll soon put a stop to these scoundrels' game by degradation and banishment and fines and bonds and death. But their license cannot be satisfactorily put a stop to so. The remnant left unpunished would still go on harassing the realm. Now there is one method to adopt to put a thorough end to this disorder. Whosoever there be in the king's realm who devote themselves to keeping cattle and agriculture, to them let his majesty the king give food and seed corn. Whosoever there be in the king's realm who devote themselves to trade, to them let his majesty the king give capital. Whosoever there be in the king's realm who devote themselves to government service, to them let his majesty the king give wages and food. Then those men, following each his own business, will no longer harass the realm. The king's revenue will go up, the country will be quiet and at peace, and the populace pleased with one another and happy, dancing their children in their arms, will dwell with open doors. Then King Wide Realm, O Brahmin, accepted the word of his chaplain and did as he had said. And those men following each his business harassed the realm no further, and the king's revenue went up, and the country became quiet and at peace, and the populace pleased with one with another, and happy, dancing their children in their arms, dwelt with open doors. So King Wide Realm had his chaplain called and said, "The disorder is at an end, the country is at peace. I want to offer that great offering. Let the venerable one instruct me how for my weal and my welfare for many days." Then let his majesty the king send invitations to whomsoever there may be in his realm who are Kshatriyas, vassals of his, either in the country or the towns, or who are ministers and officials of his, either in the country or the towns, or who are Brahmins of position, either in the country or the towns, or who are householders of substance, either in the country or the towns, saying, "I intend to offer a great offering. Let the venerable ones give their sanction to what will be to me for weal and welfare for many days." Then King Wide Realm, O Brahmin, accepted the word of his chaplain and did as he had said. And they each, Kshatriyas and ministers and Brahmins and the householders, made a like reply. Let his majesty the king celebrate the offering. The time is suitable, O king. Thus did these four, as colleagues, by consent, become wherewithal to furnish forth that offering. King Wide Realm was gifted in the following 8 ways. He was well born on both sides, on the Moor side and on the Fars, of pure descent back through 7 generations, and no slur was cast upon him, and no reproach in respect of birth. He was handsome, pleasant in appearance, inspiring trust, gifted with great beauty of complexion, fair in color, fine in presence, stately to behold. He was mighty, with great wealth and large property, with stores of silver and gold, and aids to enjoyment, and treasures of grain, with his treasure houses and his garners full. He was powerful, in command of an army, loyal and disciplined, in 4 divisions of elephants, cavalry, chariots, and bowmen, burning up methinks his enemies by his very glory. He was a believer and generous, a noble giver, keeping open house, a welling spring, whence samanas and brahmanas, the poor and the wayfarers, beggars and petitioners might draw, a doer of benevolent deeds. He was learned in all kinds of knowledge. He knew the meaning of what had been said, and could explain this saying has such and such a meaning, and that such and such. He was intelligent, expert, and wise, and able to think out things present or past or future. And these 8 gifts of his too became wherewithal to furnish forth that offering. The Brahmin, his chaplain, was gifted in the following 4 ways. He was well born on both sides, on the Moors and on the Fars, of pure descent back through 7 generations, with no slur cast upon him, and no reproach in respect of birth. He was a student repeater who knew the mystic verses by heart, master of the 3 Vedas, with the indices, the ritual, the phonology, and the exegesis as a 4th, and the legends as a 5th, learned in the idioms and the grammar, versed in Lokayacha nature lore, and in the 32 marks of the body on the body of a great man. He was virtuous, established in virtue, gifted with virtue that had grown great. He was intelligent, expert, and wise, foremost, or at most the second amongst those who hold out the ladles. Thus these 4 gifts of his too became wherewithal to furnish forth that offering. And further, O Brahma, the chaplain, before the offering had begun, explained to King Wide Realm the 3 modes. Should his majesty the king, before starting on the great offering, feel any such regret as, "Great alas will be the portion of my wealth utilized up herein," let not the majesty harbor such regret. Should his majesty the king, whilst he is offering the great offering, feel any such regret as, "Great alas will be the portion of my wealth utilized up herein," let not the king harbor such regret. Should his majesty the king, when the great offering has been offered, feel any such regret as, "Great alas has been the portion of my wealth utilized up herein," let not the king harbor such regret. Thus did the chaplain, O Brahmin, before the offering had begun, explain to King Wide Realm the 3 modes. And further, O Brahmin, the chaplain, before the offering had begun, in order to prevent any compunction that might afterwards in 10 ways arise as regards those who had taken part therein, said, "Now there will come to your offering, sire, men who destroy the life of living beings, and men who refrain therefrom. Men who take what has not been given, and men who refrain therefrom. Men who act evilly in respect of lusts, and men who refrain therefrom. Men who speak lies, and men who do not. Men who slander, and men who do not. Men who speak rudely, and men who do not. Men who chatter vain things, and men who refrain therefrom. Men who covet, and men who covet not. Men who harbor ill will, and men who harbor it not. Men whose views are wrong, and men whose views are right. Of each of these let them who do evil alone with their evil. For them who do well, let your majesty offer for them, sire, arrange the rites. Them let the king gratify. In them shall your heart within find peace." And further, O Brahmin, the chaplain, whilst the king was carrying out the offering, instructed and roused and incited and gladdened his heart in 16 ways. Should there be people who should say of the king as he is offering the offering, "King Wide Realm is celebrating offering without having invited the 4 classes of his subjects, without himself having the 8 personal gifts, without the assistance of a Brahmin who has the 4 personal gifts, then would they speak not according to the fact, for the consent of the 4 classes has been obtained. The king has the 8, and his Brahmin has the 4 personal gifts. With regard to each and every one of these 16 conditions, the king may rest assured that it has been fulfilled. He can offer and be glad and possess his heart in peace. And further, O Brahmin, at that offering there were neither were any oxen slain, neither goats, nor fowls, nor fatted pigs, nor were any kinds of living creatures put to death. No trees were cut down to be utilized as posts. No double grasses mown to strew around the offertory spot. And the slaves and messengers and workmen there employed were driven neither by rods nor fear, nor carried on their work weeping with tears upon their faces. Whoso chose to help, he worked. Whoso chose not to help, he worked not. What each chose to do, he did. What they chose not to do, that was left undone. With ghee and oil and butter and milk and honey and sugar only was that offering accomplished. And further, O Brahmin, the Kshatriya vassals and the ministers and officials and the Brahmins of position and the householders of substance, whether of the country or of the towns, went to King Raibram, taking with them much wealth, and said, This abundant wealth, sire, have we brought hither for the king's use. Let his majesty accept it at our hands. Sufficient wealth have I, my friends, laid up for the produce of taxation that is just. Do you keep yours and take away further with you. When they had thus been refused by the king, they went aside and considered what thus one with the other. It would not beseem us now, were we to take this wealth away again to our own homes. King Wide Realm is offering a great offering. Let us to make an after offering. So the Kshatriyas established a continual largess to the east of the king's sacrificial pit and offertory pit, and the officials to the south thereof, and the Brahmins to the west thereof, and the householders to the north thereof. And the things given and the manner of their gift was in all respects like unto the great offering of King Wide Realm himself. Thus, O Brahmin, there was a 4-fold cooperation, and King Wide Realm was gifted with 8 personal gifts, and his officiating Brahmin with 4. And there were 3 modes of the giving of that offering. And this, O Brahmin, is what is called due celebration of an offering in its 3-fold mode, and with its furniture of 16 kinds. And when he had thus spoken, those Brahmins lifted up their voices in tumult and said, How glorious the offering, how pure is its accomplishment. But Kuttadanta the Brahmin sat there in silence. Then those Brahmins said to Kuttadanta, Why do you not approve the benevolent words of the Samana Gotama as well said? I do not fail to approve, for he who approves not as well said that which has been well said, spoken by the Samana Gotama, verily his head was split in twain. But I was considering that the Samana Gotama does not say, Thus have I heard, nor thus behooves it to be, but says only, Thus it was then, and it was like that then. So I thought for certainty the Samana Gotama himself must at that time have been King Wide Realm, or the Brahmin who officiated for him at that offering. Does the Venerable Gotama admit that he who celebrates such an offering, or causes it to be celebrated, is reborn at the dissolution of the body after death into some state of happiness in heaven? Yes, O Brahmin, that I admit. And at that time I was the Brahmin who, as chaplain, had that offering performed. Is there, O Gotama, any other offering less difficult and less troublesome, with further benefit and with further fruit and further advantage still than this? Yes, O Brahmin, there is. And what, O Gotama, may that be? The perpetual gifts kept up in a family where they are given specifically to virtuous recluses. But what is the reason, O Gotama, and what the cause, why such perpetual givings specifically to virtuous recluses and kept up in a family are less difficult and troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than that other offering with its 3 modes and its accessories of 16 kinds? To the latter sort of offering, O Brahmin, neither will the Arahats go, nor such as have entered on the Arahat way. And why not? Because at it beating with sticks takes place, and seizing by the throat. But they will go to the former, where such things are not, and therefore are such perpetual gifts above the other sort of offering. And is there, O Gotama, any other offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than either of these? Yes, O Brahmin, there is. And what, O Gotama, may that be? The putting up of a dwelling place, Vahara, on behalf of the Sangha in all the 4 directions. And is there, O Gotama, any other offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than each and all of these 3? Yes, O Brahmin, there is. And what, O Gotama, may that be? He who with trusting heart takes a Buddha as his guide, and the Dharma and the Sangha, that is an offering better than open largesse, better than perpetual alms, better than gift of dwelling places. And is there, O Gautama, any other offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than all these four? When a man with trusting heart takes upon himself the precepts: absence from destroying life, absence from taking what has not been given, absence from evil conduct in respect of lusts, absence from lying words, absence from strong intoxicating maddening drinks, the root of carelessness, that is an offering better than open largesse, better than perpetual alms, better than gifts of dwelling places, better than accepting guidance. And is there, O Gautama, any other offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than all these five? Yes, O Brahman, there is. And what, O Gautama, may that be? Herein, Brahman, a Tathagata arises in the world, a worthy one, perfectly enlightened, endowed with clear knowledge and conduct accomplished, a knower of the world, unsurpassed, trainer of men, to be tamed, teacher of angels and men, enlightened and exalted, having realized by his own direct knowledge this world with his angels, his Maras, and his Brahmas, this generation with his recluses and Brahmins, his rulers and people, he makes it known to others. He teaches the Dharma that is benevolent in the beginning, benevolent in the middle, and benevolent in the end, possessing meaning and phrasing. He reveals the holy life that is fully complete and purified. A householder or a householder's son, or one born into some other family, hears the Dhamma. Having heard the Dhamma, he gains faith in the Tathagata. Endowed with such faith, he reflects, the household life is crowded, a path of dust. Going forth is like the open air. It is not easy for one dwelling at home to lead the perfectly complete, perfectly purified holy life, bright as a polished conch. Let me shave off hair and beard, put on saffron robes, and go forth from home to homelessness. After some time, he abandons his accumulation of wealth, be it large or small. He abandons his circle of relatives, be it large or small. He shaves off his hair and beard, puts on saffron robes, and goes forth from home to homelessness. When he has thus gone forth, he lives restrained by the restraint of the patimoksha, possessed of proper behavior and resort. Having taken up the rules of training, he trains himself in them, seeing danger in the slightest faults. He comes to be endowed with wholesome bodily and verbal action. His livelihood is purified, and he is possessed of conduct. He guards the doors of his sense faculties, is endowed with mindfulness and clear comprehension, and is content. And how Brahman is the bhikshu possessed of virtuous discipline? Herein, Brahman, having abandoned the destruction of life, the bhikshu abstains from the destruction of life. He has laid down the rod and weapon, and dwells conscientious, full of kindness, sympathetic for the well-being of all living beings. Having abandoned taking what is not given, he abstains from taking what is not given. Accepting and expecting only what is given, he lives in honesty with a pure mind. Having abandoned in celibacy, he leads the holy life of celibacy. He dwells aloof and abstains from the vulgar practice of sexual intercourse. Having abandoned false speech, he abstains from false speech. He speaks only the truth. He lives devoted to truth, trustworthy and reliable. He does not deceive anyone in the world. Having abandoned slander, he abstains from slander. He does not repeat elsewhere what he has heard here in order to divide others from the people here, nor does he repeat here what he has heard elsewhere in order to divide these from the people there. Thus he is a reconciler of those who are divided, and a promoter of friendships. Rejoicing, delighting, and exulting in concord, he speaks only words that are conducive to concord. Having abandoned harsh speech, he abstains from harsh speech. He speaks only such words as are gentle, pleasing to the ear, endearing, going to the heart, polite, amiable, and agreeable to many folk. Having abandoned idle chatter, he abstains from idle chatter. He speaks at the right time, speaks what is factual and beneficial, speaks on the Dharma and the discipline. His words are worth treasuring. They are timely, backed by reason, measured, and connected with the benevolent. He abstains from damaging seed and plant life. He attains only one part of the day. He eats only in one part of the day, refraining from food at night and from eating at improper times. He abstains from dancing, singing, instrumental music, and from witnessing unsuitable shows. He abstains from wearing garlands, embellishing himself, and beautifying himself with unguents. He abstains from high and luxurious beds and seats. He abstains from accepting gold and silver. He abstains from accepting uncooked grain, raw meat, women and girls, male and female slaves, goats and sheep, fowl and swine, elephants, cattle, horses, and mares. He abstains from accepting fields and lands. He abstains from running messages and errands. He abstains from buying and selling. He abstains from dealing with false weights, false metals, and false measures. He abstains from the crooked ways of bribery, deception, and fraud. He abstains from mutilating, executing, imprisoning, robbery, plunder, and violence. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, continually cause damage to seed and plant life, to plants propagated from roots, stems, joints, buds, and seeds, he abstains from damaging seed and plant life. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, enjoy the utilization of stored up treasures, such as stored up food, drinks, garments, vehicles, bedding, scents, and comestibles, he abstains from the utilization of stored up treasures. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, attend unsuitable shows, such as shows featuring dancing, singing, or instrumental music, theatrical performances, narrations of legends, music played by hand clapping, cymbals, and drums, picture houses, acrobatic performances, combats of elephants, horses, buffaloes, bulls, goats, rams, cocks, and quails, stick fights, boxing and wrestling, sham fights, roll calls, battle arrays, and regimental reviews. He abstains from attending such unsuitable shows. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, indulge in the following games and recreations: Atapada, Dasapada, Akasa, Paryarapata, Santika, Kalika, Gatika, Salakahata, Aka, Pangachira, Vankaka, Mokichika, Chingalika, Patalaka, Rataka, Danuka, Akarika, Manisika, Yatavaja. He abstains from such games that are a basis for negligence. Whereas some recluses and Brahmas, while living on the food offered by the faithful, enjoy the utilization of high and luxurious beds and seats, such as spacious couches, thrones with animal figures carved on the supports, long-haired coverlets, multicolored patchwork coverlets, white woolen coverlets embroidered with flowers, quilts stuffed with cotton, woolen coverlets embroidered with animal figures, woolen coverlets with hair on both sides or on one side, bedspreads embroidered with gems, silk coverlets, dance hall carpets, elephant, horse, or chariot rugs of antelope skins, choice spreads made of Kadali deer hides, spreads with red awnings overhead, couches with red cushions for head and feet. He abstains from the utilization of such high and luxurious beds and seats. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, enjoy the utilization of such devices for embellishing and beautifying themselves as the following: rubbing scented powders into the body, massaging with oils, bathing in perfumed water, kneading the limbs, mirrors, ointments, garlands, scents, unguents, face powders, makeup, bracelets, headbands, decorated walking sticks, ornamented medicine tubes, rapiers, soleil shades, embroidered sandals, turbans, diadems, yak-tail whisks, and long fringed white robes. He abstains from the utilization of such devices for embellishing and beautification. Whereas some recluses and Brahmas, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, engage in frivolous chatter, such as talk about kings, thieves, and ministers of state, talk about armies, dangers, and wars, talk about food, drink, garments, and lodgings, talk about garlands and scents, talk about relations, vehicles, villages, towns, cities, and countries, talk about women and talk about heroes, street talk and talk by the well, talk about those departed days gone by, rambling chit-chat, speculators about the world and about the sea, talk about gain and loss. He abstains from such frivolous chatter. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, engage in wrangling argumentation, saying to one another, "You don't understand this doctrine and discipline. It is I who understand this doctrine and discipline. How can you understand this doctrine and discipline? You're practicing the wrong way, I'm practicing the right way. I'm being consistent, you're inconsistent. What should have been said first, you said last. What should have been said last, you said first. What you took so long to think out has been confuted. Your doctrine has been refuted. You're defeated. Go try to save your doctrine and disentangle yourself now if you can." He abstains from such wrangling argumentation. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, while sleeping on the food offered by the faithful, engage in running messages and errands for kings, ministers of state, kachas, Brahmins, householders, or youths who command them, "Go here, go there, take this, bring that from there." He abstains from running such messages and errands. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, while living on the food offered by the faithful, engage in scheming, talking, hinting, belittling others, and pursuing gain with gain, he abstains from such kinds of scheming and talking. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, while living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by a wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as prophesying long life, prosperity, additionally, or the verse from the marks on a person's limbs, hands, feet, and additionally, divining by means of omens and signs, making auguries on the basis of thunderbolts and celestial portents, interpreting ominous dreams, telling fortunes from marks on the body, making auguries from the marks on the cloth gnawed by mice, offering fire oblations, offering oblations from a ladle, offering oblations of husks, rice powder, rice grains, ghee, and oil to the angels, offering oblations from the mouth, offering blood sacrifices to the angels, making predictions based on the fingertips, determining whether the site for a proposed house or garden is propitious or not, making predictions to officers of state, laying demons in the cemetery, laying ghosts, knowledge of charms to be pronounced by one living in an earthen house, snake charming, the poison craft, scorpion craft, rat craft, bird craft, crow craft, foretelling the number of years that a man has to live, reciting charms to give protections from arrows, reciting charms to understand the language of animals. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, while living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as interpreting the significance of the color, shape, and other features of the following items to determine whether they perform fortune or misfortune for their owners: gems, garments, staffs, swords, spears, arrows, bows, other weapons, women, men, boys, girls, slaves, slave women, elephants, horses, buffaloes, bulls, cows, goats, rams, fowls, quails, lizards, earrings or house gables, tortoises, and other animals. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, while living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such base arts as making predictions to the effect that the king will march forth, the king will return, our king will attack, and the enemy king will retreat, our king will attack, and our king will retreat. Our king will triumph, and the enemy king will be defeated. The enemy king will triumph, and our king will be defeated. Thus there will be victory for one and defeat for the other. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as predicting. There will be an eclipse of the moon, an eclipse of the soleil, and an eclipse of a constellation. The soleil and the moon will go on their proper courses. There will be an aberration of the soleil and moon. The constellation will go on their proper courses. The constellations will go on their proper courses. There will be an aberration of a constellation. There will be a fall of meteors. There will be a sky blaze. There will be an earthquake. There will be an earth roar. There will be a rising and setting, a darkening, brightening of the moon, soleil, and constellations. Such will be the result of the moon's eclipse, such the result of the soleil's eclipse, and so on down to such will be the result of the rising and setting, darkening, and brightening of the moon, soleil, and constellations. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, while living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as predicting. There will be abundant rain, there will be a drought, there will be a benevolent harvest, there will be a famine, there will be security, there will be danger, there will be sickness, there will be health. Or they earn their living by accounting, computation, calculation, the composing of poetry, and speculations about the world. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as arranging auspicious dates for marriages, both those in which the bride is brought home and those in which she is sent out, arranging auspicious dates for betrothals and divorces, arranging auspicious dates for the accumulation or expenditure of money, reciting charms to make people lucky or unlucky, rejuvenating the fetuses of abortive women, reciting spells to bind a man's tongue, to paralyze his jaws, to make him lose control over his hands, to bring on deafness, obtaining auricular answers to questions by means of a mirror, a girl, or an angel, worshipping the soleil, worshipping Mahabrahma, bringing forth flames from the mouth, invoking the angel of luck. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. Whereas some recluses and Brahmanas, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as promising gifts to deities in return for favors, fulfilling such promises, demonology, reciting spells after entering an earthen house, inducing virility and impotence, preparing and consecrating sites for a house, giving ceremonial mouthwashes and ceremonial bathing, offering offertory fires, administering emetics, purgatives, expectorants, and phlegmagogues, administering medicines through the ear and through the nose, administering ointments and counter-ointments, practicing fine surgery on the eyes and ears, practicing general surgery for the body as a children's doctor. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. Brahman, the bhikshu, who is thus possessed of virtuous discipline, sees no danger anywhere in regard to his restraint by virtuous discipline. Just as a head-anointed noble warrior who has defeated his enemies sees no danger anywhere from his enemies, so the bhikshu who is thus possessed of virtuous discipline sees no danger anywhere in regard to his restraint by virtuous discipline. Endowed with his noble aggregate of virtuous discipline, he experiences within himself a blameless happiness. In this way, Brahman, the bhikshu, is possessed of virtuous discipline. And how Brahman is the bhikshu guard? How does the bhikshu guard the doors of his sense faculties? Herein, Brahman, having seen a form with the eye, the bhikshu does not grasp at the sign or the details, since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the eye, evil, unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the eye, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the eye. Having heard a sound with the ear, the bhikshu does not grasp at the sign or the details, since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the ear, evil, unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the ear, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the ear. Having smelled an odor with the nose, the bhikshu does not grasp at the sign or the details. Since that he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the mind, of the nose, since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the nose, evil, unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the nose, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the nose. Having tasted a flavor with the tongue, the bhikshu does not grasp at the sign or the details. Since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the tongue, evil and unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the tongue, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the tongue. Having touched a tangible object with the body, the bhikshu does not grasp at the sign or the details. Since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the body, evil and unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the body, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the body. Having cognized a mind object with a mind, the bhikshu does not grasp at the sign or the details, since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the mind, evil, unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the eye, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the eye. Since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the mind, evil, unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the mind, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the mind. Endowed with this noble restraint of the sense faculties, he experiences within himself an unblemished happiness. In this way, Brahman, the bhikshu, guards the doors of the sense faculties. And how Brahman is the bhikshu endowed with mindfulness and clear comprehension? Herein, Brahman, in going forward and returning, the bhikshu acts with clear comprehension. In looking ahead and looking aside, he acts with clear comprehension. And bending and stretching the limbs, he acts with clear comprehension. In wearing his robes and cloak and utilizing his alms bowl, he acts with clear comprehension. In eating, drinking, chewing, and tasting, he acts with clear comprehension. In defecating and urinating, he acts with clear comprehension. In going, standing, sitting, lying down, waking up, speaking, and remaining silent, he acts with clear comprehension. In this way, Brahman, the bhikshu, is endowed with mindfulness and clear comprehension. And how Brahman is the bhikshu content? Herein, Brahman, a bhikshu, is content with robes to protect his body and alms food to sustain his belly. Wherever he goes, he sets out, taking only his requisites along with him. Just as a bird, wherever it goes, flies with its wings as its only burden, in the same way, a bhikshu is content with robes to protect his body and alms food to sustain his belly. Wherever he goes, he sets out, taking only his requisites along with him. In this way, Brahman, the bhikshu, is content. Endowed with this noble aggregate of virtuous discipline, this noble restraint over the sense faculties, this noble mindfulness and clear comprehension, and this noble contentment, he resorts toward the secluded dwelling of a fort, a foot of a tree, the foot of a tree, a mountain, a glen, a hillside cave, a cremation ground, a jungle grove, the open air, a heap of straw. After returning from his alms round, following his meals, he sits down, crosses his legs, holds his body erect, and sets up mindfulness before him. Having abandoned covetousness for the world, he dwells with a mind free from covetousness. He purifies his mind from covetousness. Having abandoned ill will and hatred, he dwells with a benevolent mind, sympathetic for the well-being of all living beings. He purifies his mind from ill will and hatred. Having abandoned dullness and drowsiness, he dwells perceiving light, mindful and clearly comprehending. He purifies his mind from dullness and drowsiness. Having abandoned restlessness and worry, he dwells at ease within himself with a peaceful mind. He purifies his mind from restlessness and worry. Having abandoned doubt, he dwells as one who has passed beyond doubt. Unperplexed about wholesome states, he purifies his mind from doubt. Brahman, suppose a man were to take a loan and apply it to his business, and his business were to succeed so that he could pay back his old debts and would have enough money left over to maintain a wife. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. Again, Brahman, suppose a man were to become sick, afflicted, gravely ill, so that he could not enjoy his food and his strength would decline. After some time, he would recover from that illness and would enjoy his food and regain his bodily strength. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. Again, Brahma, suppose a man were locked up in a prison. After some time, he would be released from prison, safe and secure, with no loss of his possessions. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. Again, Brahman, suppose a man were a slave without independence, subservient to others, unable to go where he wants. After some time, he would be released from slavery and gain his independence. He would no longer be subservient to others, but a free man able to go where he wants. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. Again, Brahman, suppose a man were with wealth and possessions, were traveling along a desert road where food was scarce and dangers were many. After some time, he would cross over the desert and arrive safely at a village which is safe and free from danger. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. In the same way, Brahman, when a bhikshu sees that these 5 hindrances are unabandoned within himself, he regards that as debt, as a sickness, as confinement in prison, as slavery, as a desert road. But when he sees that these 5 hindrances have been abandoned within himself, he regards that as freedom from debt, as benevolent health, as release from prison, as freedom from slavery, as a place of safety. When he sees that these 5 hindrances have been abandoned within himself, gladness arises. When he is gladdened, rapture arises. When his mind is filled with rapture, his body becomes tranquil. Tranquil in body, he experiences happiness. Being happy, his mind becomes concentrated. Quite secluded from sense pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, he enters and dwells in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, and filled with rapture and happiness born of seclusion. He drenches, steeps, saturates, and suffuses his body with this rapture and happiness born of seclusion, so that there is no part of his entire body which is not suffused by this rapture and happiness. Brahman, suppose a skilled bath attendant or his apprentice were to pour soap powder into a metal basin, sprinkle it with water, and knead it into a ball, so that the ball of soap powder be pervaded by moisture, encompassed by moisture, suffused with moisture inside and out, yet would not trickle. In the same way, Brahman the bhikshu drenches, steeps, saturates, and suffuses his body with the rapture and happiness born of seclusion, that there is no part of his entire body which is not suffused by this rapture and happiness. This Brahman is an offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than the previous offerings. Further, Brahman, with the subsiding of applied and sustained thought, the bhikshu enters and dwells in the second jhana, which is accompanied by internal confidence and unification of mind, is without applied and sustained thought, and is filled with the rapture and happiness born of concentration. He drenches, steeps, saturates, and suffuses his body with this rapture and happiness born of concentration, so that there is no part of his entire body which is not suffused by this rapture and happiness. Brahman, suppose there were a deep lake whose waters welled up from below. It would have no inlet of water from the east, west, north, or south, nor would it be refilled from time to time with showers of rain, yet a current of cool water welling up from within the lake would drench, steep, saturate, and suffuse the whole lake, so that there would be no part of that entire lake which is not suffused with the cool water. In the same way, Brahman the bhikshu drenches, steeps, saturates, and suffuses his body with the rapture and happiness born of concentration, so that there is no part of his entire body which is not suffused by this rapture and happiness. This too, Brahman, is an offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than the previous offerings. Further, Brahman, with the fading away of rapture, the bhikshu dwells in equanimity, mindful and clearly comprehending, and experiences happiness with the body. Thus he enters and dwells in the third jhana, of which the noble ones declare, he dwells happily with equanimity and mindfulness. He drenches, steeps, saturates, and suffuses his body with this happiness free from rapture, so that there is no part of his entire body which is not suffused by this happiness. Brahman, suppose in a lotus pond there were blue, white, or red lotuses that have been born in the water, grown in the water, and never rise up above the water, but flourish immersed in the water. From their tips to their roots they would be drenched, steeped, saturated, and suffused with cool water, so that there would be no part of those lotuses not suffused with cool water. In the same way, Brahman the bhikshu drenches, steeps, saturates, and suffuses his body with the happiness free from rapture, so that there is no part of his entire body which is not suffused by this happiness. This too, Brahman, is an offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than the previous offerings. Further, Brahman, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous passing away of joy and grief, the bhikshu enters and dwells in the fourth jhana, which is neither pleasant nor painful, and contains mindfulness, fully purified by equanimity. He sits suffusing his body with a pure, bright mind, so that there is no part of his entire body not suffused by a pure, bright mind. Brahman, suppose a man were to be sitting covered from the head down by a white cloth, so that there would be no part of his entire body not suffused by the white cloth. In the same way, Brahman the bhikshu sits suffusing his body with a pure, bright mind, so that there is no part of his entire body not suffused by a pure, bright mind. This too, Brahman, is an offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than the previous offerings. When his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to knowledge and vision. He understands thus: this is my body, having material form, composed of the four primary elements, originating from far and more, built up out of rice and gruel, impermanent, subject to rubbing and pressing, to dissolution and dispersion. And this is my consciousness, supported by it and bound up with it. Brahman, suppose there were a beautiful beryl gem of purest water, a faceted, well-cut, clear, limpid, flawless, endowed with all excellent qualities. And through it there would run a blue, yellow, red, white, or brown thread. A man with keen sights, taking it in his hand, would reflect upon it thus: this is a beautiful beryl gem of purest water, a faceted, well-cut, clear, limpid, flawless, endowed with all qualities, all excellent qualities. And running through it there is this blue, yellow, red, white, or brown thread. In the same way, Brahman, when his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, the bhikshu directs and inclines it to knowledge and vision, and understands thus: this is my body, having material form, composed of the four primary elements, originating from far and more, built up out of rice and gruel, impermanent, subject to rubbing and pressing, to dissolution and dispersion. And this is my consciousness, supported by it and bound up with it. This too, Brahman, pertains to his wisdom. When his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to creating a mind-made body. From this body he creates another body, having material form, mind-made, complete in all its parts, and not lacking any faculties. Brahman, suppose a man were to draw out a reed from its sheath, he would think, this is the reed, this is the sheath. The reed is one thing, the sheath another, but the reed has been drawn out from the sheath. Or suppose a man were to draw a sword out from its scabbard, he would think, this is the sword, this is the scabbard. The sword is one thing, the scabbard another, but the sword has been drawn out from the scabbard. Or suppose a man were to pull a snake out from its slaw, he would think, this is the snake, this is the slaw. The snake is one thing, the slaw another, but the snake has been pulled out from the slaw. In the same way, Brahman, his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability. He directs and inclines it to creating a mind-made body. From this body he creates another body, having material form, mind-made, complete in all its parts, not lacking any faculties. This too, Brahman, is an offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than the previous offerings. When his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to the modes of supernormal power. He exercises the various modes of supernormal power. Having been one, he becomes many, and having been many, he becomes one. He appears and vanishes. He goes unimpeded through walls, ramparts, and mountains as if through space. He dives in and out of the earth as if it were water. He walks on water without sinking as if it were earth. Sitting cross-legged, he travels through space like a winged bird. With his hand he touches the strokes the soleil and the moon, so mighty and powerful. He exercises mastery over the body as distant as the Brahma world. Brahman, suppose a skilled potter or his apprentice were to make and fashion out of well-prepared clay whatever kind of vessel he might desire. Or suppose a skilled ivory worker or his apprentice were to make and fashion out of well-prepared ivory whatever kind of ivory work he might desire. Or suppose a skilled goldsmith or his apprentice were to make and fashion out of well-prepared gold whatever kind of gold work he might desire. In the same way, Brahman, when his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to the modes of supernormal power. He exercises the various modes of supernormal power. Having been one, he becomes many. Having been many, he becomes one. He appears and vanishes. He goes unimpeded through walls, ramparts, and mountains as if through space. He dives in and out of the earth as if it were water. He walks on water without sinking as if it were earth. Sitting cross-legged, and he travels through space like a winged bird. With his hand he touches and strokes the soleil and the moon, so mighty and powerful. He exercises mastery over the body as distant as the Brahma world. This too, Brahman, is an offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than the previous offerings. When his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to the sacred ear element. With the sacred ear element, which is purified and surpasses the human, he hears both kinds of sound, the sacred and the human, those which are distant and those which are near. Brahman, suppose a man traveling along a highway were to hear the sounds of kettle drums, tambours, horns, cymbals, and tom-toms. He would think, this is the sound of kettle drums, this is the sound of tambours, this is the sound of horns, cymbals, and tom-toms. In the same way, Brahman, when his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to the sacred ear element. With the sacred ear element, which is purified and surpasses the human, he hears both kinds of sound, the sacred and the human, those which are distant and those which are near. This too, Brahman, is an offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than the previous offerings. When his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to the knowledge of encompassing the minds of others. He understands the mind of other beings and persons, having encompassed them with his own mind. He understands the mind with lust as a mind with lust, and a mind without lust as a mind without lust. He understands the mind with hatred as a mind with hatred, and a mind without hatred as a mind without hatred. He understands a mind with delusion as a mind with delusion, and a mind without delusion as a mind without delusion. He understands a contracted mind as a contracted mind, and a distracted mind as a distracted mind. He understands an exalted mind as an exalted mind, and an unexalted mind as an unexalted mind. He understands a surpassable mind as a surpassable mind, and an unsurpassable mind as an unsurpassable mind. He understands a concentrated mind as a concentrated mind, and an unconcentrated mind as an unconcentrated mind. He understands a liberated mind as a liberated mind, and an unliberated mind as an unliberated mind. Brahman, suppose a young man or woman fond of ornaments, examining his or her own facial reflection in a pure bright mirror or in a bowl of clear water, would know if there were a mole, it has a mole, and if there were no mole, it has no mole. In the same way, Brahman, when his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to the knowledge of encompassing the minds of others. He understands the minds of other beings and persons, having encompassed them with his own mind. He understands a mind with lust as a mind with lust, a mind without lust as a mind without lust. He understands a mind with hatred as a mind with hatred, and a mind without hatred as a mind without hatred. He understands a mind with delusion as a mind with delusion, and a mind without delusion as a mind without delusion. He understands a contracted mind as a contracted mind, and a distracted mind as a distracted mind. He understands an exalted mind as an exalted mind, and an unexalted mind as an unexalted mind. He understands a surpassable mind as a surpassable mind, and an unsurpassable mind as an unsurpassable mind. He understands a concentrated mind as a concentrated mind, and an unconcentrated mind as an unconcentrated mind. He understands a liberated mind as a liberated mind, and an unliberated mind as an unliberated mind. This to Brahman is an offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than the previous offerings. When his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to the knowledge of recollecting past lives. He recollects his numerous past lives, that is, 1 birth, 2 births, 3, 4, or 5 births, 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50 births, 100 births, 1,000 births, 100,000 births, many eons of world contraction, many eons of world expansion, many eons of world contraction and expansion. Recollecting. There I had such a name, belonged to such a clan, had such an appearance, such was my food, such my experience of pleasure and pain, such my span of life. Passing away from that state, I re-arose there. There too I had such a name, belonged to such a clan, had such an appearance, such was my food, such my experience of pleasure and pain, such my span of life. Passing away from that state, I re-arose here. Thus he recollects his numerous past lives and their modes and their details. Brahman, suppose a man were to go from his own village to another village, then from that village to still another village, and then from that village he would return to his own village. He would think to himself, I went from my own village to that village. There I stood in such a way, sat in such a way, spoke in such a way, and remained silent in such a way. From that village I went to still yet another village. There too I stood in such a way, sat in such a way, spoke in such a way, and remained silent in such a way. From that village I returned to my own village. In the same way, Brahman, when his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, and steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to the knowledge of recollecting past lives. He recollects his numerous past lives, that is, 1 birth, 2 births, 3, 4, or 5 births, 10, 20, 30, 40, or 50 births, 100 births, 1,000 births, 100,000 births, many eons of world contraction, many eons of world expansion, many eons of world contraction and expansion. Recollecting. There I had such a name, belonged to such a clan, had such an appearance, such was my food, such my experience of pleasure and pain, such my span of life. Passing away from that state, I re-arose there. There too I had such a name, belonged to such a clan, had such an appearance, such was my food, such my experience of pleasure and pain, such my span of life. Passing away from that state, I re-arose here. Thus he recollects his numerous past lives and their modes and their details. This too, Brahman, is an offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than the previous offerings. When his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to the knowledge of the passing away and reappearance of beings. With the sacred eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, he sees beings passing away and reappearing. Inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, he understands how beings fare according to their karma thus. These beings who were endowed with mad conduct of body, speech, and mind, who reviled the noble ones, held wrong views, and undertook actions governed by wrong views, with the breakable of the body after death, have reappeared in the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the lower realms, and hell. But these beings who were endowed with benevolent conduct of body, speech, and mind, who did not revile the noble ones, held right views, and undertook actions governed by right views, with the breakable of the body after death, have reappeared in the benevolent destinations in the heavenly world. Thus, with the sacred eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, he sees beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, and he understands how beings fare in accordance with their karma. Brahman, suppose in a central square there were a building with an upper terrace, and a man with keen sight were standing there were to see people entering a house, leaving it, walking along the streets, and sitting in the central square. He would think to himself, those people are entering the house, those are leaving it, those are walking along the streets, and those are sitting in the central square. In the same way, Brahman, when his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs it, inclines it to the knowledge of the passing away and reappearance of beings. With the sacred eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, he sees beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, and he understands how beings fare according to their karma thus. These beings who were endowed with the bad conduct of body, speech, and mind, who reviled the noble ones, held wrong views, and undertook actions governed by wrong views, with the breakup of the body after death, have reappeared in the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the lower realms, and hell. But these beings who were endowed with benevolent conduct of body, speech, and mind, who did not revile the noble ones, held right views, and undertook actions governed by right views, with the breakup of the body after death, have reappeared in the benevolent destinations in the heavenly world. With the sacred eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, he sees beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate. And he understands how beings fare in accordance with their karma. This too, Brahman, is an offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than the previous offerings. When his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained in imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to the knowledge of the destruction of the cankers. He understands as it truly is, this is suffering. He understands as it truly is, this is the origin of suffering. He understands as it truly is, this is the cessation of suffering. He understands as it truly is, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. He understands as it truly is, these are the cankers. He understands as it truly is, this is the origin of the cankers. He understands as it truly is, this is the cessation of the cankers. He understands as it truly is, this is the way leading to the cessation of the cankers. Knowing and seeing thus, his mind is liberated from the canker of sensual desire, from the canker of existence, and from the canker of ignorance. When it is liberated, the knowledge arises, it is liberated. He understands destroyed his birth, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is nothing further beyond this. Brahman, suppose in a mountain glen there were a lake with clear water, limpid and unsullied. A man with clean sight, standing on the bank, would see oysters, shells, sand, and pebbles, and shoals of fish moving about and keeping still. He would think to himself, this is a lake with clear water, limpid and unsullied, and there within it are oyster shells, sand, and pebbles, and shoals of fish moving about and keeping still. In the same way, Brahman, when his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to the knowledge of the destruction of the cankers. He understands as it truly is, this is suffering. He understands as it truly is, this is the origin of suffering. He understands as it truly is, this is the cessation of suffering. He understands as it truly is, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. He understands as it truly is, these are the cankers. He understands as it truly is, this is the origin of the cankers. He understands as it truly is, this is the cessation of the cankers. He understands as it truly is, this is the way leading to the cessation of the cankers. Knowing and seeing thus, his mind is liberated from the canker of sensual desire, from the canker of existence, and from the canker of ignorance. When it is liberated, the knowledge arises, it is liberated. He understands destroyed his birth, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is nothing further beyond this. This too, Brahman, is an offering less difficult and less troublesome, of greater fruit and greater advantage than the previous offerings, and there is no offering man can celebrate, O Brahman, higher and sweeter than this. And when he had thus spoken, Kuttadanta the Brahmin said to the Blessed One, Most excellent, O Gautama, are the words of thy mouth, most excellent. Just as if a man were to set up what has been thrown down, or to reveal that which was hidden away, that which has been hidden away, or were to point out the right road to him who has gone astray, or to bring a light into the darkness so that those who had eyes could see external forms. Just even so has the Dharma been made known to me in many a figure by the Venerable Gautama. Even I, betake myself to the Venerable Gautama as my guide to the Dharma and the Sangha. May the Venerable One accept me as a disciple, as one who from this day forth, as long as life endures, has taken him as his guide. And I myself, O Gautama, will have the 700 bulls, and the 700 steers, and the 700 heifers, and the 700 goats, and the 700 rams set free. To them I grant their life. Let them eat green grass and drink fresh water, and may cool breezes waft around them. Then the Blessed One discoursed to Kuttadanta the Brahmin in due order, that is to say, he spake to him of generosity, of right conduct, of heaven, of the danger, the vanity, and the defilement of lusts, of the advantages of renunciation. And when the Blessed One became aware that Kuttadanta the Brahmin had become prepared, softened, unprejudiced, upraised, and believing in heart, then did he proclaim the doctrine the Buddhas alone have won, that is to say, the doctrine of dukkha, of sorrow, of its origin, of its cessation, and of the path. And just as a clean cloth with all stains in it washed away will readily take the dye, just even so did Kuttadanta the Brahmin, even while sitting there, obtain the pure and spotless eye for the Dhamma, and he knew whatsoever has a beginning, in that is inherent also the necessity of dissolution. And then the Brahmin Kuttadanta, as one who had seen the Dhamma, had mastered it, understood it, dived deep down into it, who had passed beyond doubt and put away perplexity and gained full confidence, who had become dependent on no other for his knowledge of the teaching of the Master, addressed the Blessed One and said, May the Venerable Gautama grant me the favor of taking his manana's meal with me, and also the members of the Sangha with him. And the Blessed One signified by silence his consent. Then the Brahmin Kuttadanta, seeing that the Blessed One had accepted, rose from his seat, and keeping his right towards him as he passed, he departed thence. And at daybreak he had sweet food, both hard and soft, made ready, and the pit prepared for his offering, and had the time announced to the Blessed One, It is time, O Gautama, and the meal is ready. And the Blessed One, who had dressed early in the matin, put on his outer robe, and taking his bowl with him, went with the brethren to Kuttadanta's offertory pit, and sat down there on the seat prepared for him. And Kuttadanta the Brahmin satisfied the brethren with the Buddha at their head, with his own hand, with sweet food, both hard and soft, till they refused any further. And when the Blessed One had finished his meal and cleansed the bowl and his hands, Khuddadanta the Brahmin took a low seat and seated himself beside him. And when he was thus seated, the Blessed One instructed and aroused and incited and gladdened Khuddadanta the Brahmin with religious discourse, and then arose from his seat and departed thence. The Dhammapada, from the Dhammapada, the Sahasa Vagam, numero 8. Better than 1,000 useless words is one useful word, hearing which one attains peace. Better than 1,000 useless verses is one useful verse, hearing which one attains peace. Better than reciting 100 meaningless verses is the reciting of one verse of Dhamma, hearing which one attains peace. Though one may conquer 1,000 times 1,000 men in battle, yet he indeed is the noblest victor who conquers himself. Self-conquest is much better than the conquest of others. Not even an angel, a celestial Mara or Brahma, can turn into defeat the victory of a person who is self-subdued and ever restrained in conduct. Though month after month, for 100 years, one should offer offerings by the thousands, yet if only for a moment, one should worship those of perfected mind. Though month after month, for 100 years, one should offer offerings by the thousands, yet if only for a moment, one should honor those of perfected minds. That honor is indeed better than a century of offerings. Though for 100 years one should tend this offertory fire in the forest, yet if only for a moment one should honor those of perfected minds, that honor is indeed better than a century of offerings. Whatever gifts and oblations one seeking merit might offer in this world for a whole year, all that is not worth 1/4 of the merit gained by revering the upright ones, which is truly excellent. To one ever eager to revere and serve the elders, these 4 blessings accrue: long life and beauty, happiness and power. Better it is to live one day virtuous and meditative than to live 100 years unvirtuous and uncontrolled. Better it is to live one day wise and meditative than to live 100 years foolish and uncontrolled. Better it is to live one day strenuous and resolute than to live 100 years sluggish and dissipated. Better it is to live one day seeing the rise and fall of things than to live 100 years without ever seeing the rise and fall of things. Better it is to live one day seeing the deathless than to live 100 years without ever seeing the deathless. Better it is to live one day seeing the supreme truth, the supreme Dhamma, than to live 100 years without ever seeing the supreme Dhamma. Gospels, Matthew 15 a 16. Then some Pharisees and teachers of the law came to Jesus from Jerusalem and asked, "Why do your disciples break the tradition of the elders? They don't wash their hands before they eat." Jesus replied, "And why do you break the command of God for the sake of your tradition? For God said, 'Honor your far and more,' and anyone who curses their far or more is to be put to death. But you say that if anyone declares that what might have been utilized to help their far or more is devoted to God, they are not to honor their far or more with it. Thus you nullify the word of God for the sake of your tradition. You hypocrites, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are distant from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules." Jesus called the crowd to him and said, "Listen and understand. What goes into someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of their mouth, that is what defiles them." Then the disciples came to him and asked, "Do you know that the Pharisees were offended when they heard this?" He replied, "Every plant that my heavenly Creator has not planted will be pulled up by the roots. Leave them, they are blind guides. If the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit." Peter said, "Explain the parable to us." "Are you still so dull?" Jesus asked them. "Don't you see that whatever enters the mouth goes into the stomach and then out of the body? But the things that come out of a person's mouth come from the heart, and these defile them. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual indecency, theft, false testimony, slander. These are what defile a person, but eating with unwashed hands does not defile them." Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, "Master, son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly." Jesus did not answer a word, so his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." He answered, "I was only sent to the lost sheep of Israel." The woman came and knelt before him. "Master, help me," she said. He replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." "Yes, it is, Master," she said. "Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the Master's table." Then Jesus said to her, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." And her daughter was healed at that moment. Jesus left there and went along the Sea of Galilee. Then he went up on a mountainside and sat down. Great crowds came to him, bringing the lame, the blind, the crippled, the mute, and many others, and laid them at his feet, and he healed them. The people were amazed when they saw that the mute speaking, the crippled made well, the lame walking, and the blind seeing, and they praised the God of Israel. Jesus called his disciples and said to him and said, "I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. I do not want to send them away hungry, or they may collapse on the way." His disciples answered, "Where could we get enough bread in this remote place to feed such a crowd?" "How many loaves do you have?" Jesus asked. "7," they replied, "and a few small fish." He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. Then he took the 7 loaves and the fish, and when he had given thanks, he broke them and gave them to the disciples, and they in turn to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. Afterward, the disciples picked up 7 basketfuls of broken portions that were left over. The number of those who ate was 4,000 men, besides women and children. After Jesus had sent the crowd away, he got into the boat and went to the vicinity of Magadan. The Pharisees and the Sadducees came to Jesus and tested him by asking him to show them a sign from heaven. He replied, "When evening comes, you say it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the matin today it will be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation looks for a sign, but none will be given it except the sign of Jonah." Jesus then left them and went away. When they went across the lake, the disciples forgot to take bread. "Be careful," Jesus said to them. "Be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees." They discussed this amongst themselves and said, "It is because we didn't bring any bread." Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked, "You of little faith, why are you talking amongst yourselves about having no bread? Do you still not understand? Why don't you remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000, and how many basketfuls you gathered? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000, and how many basketfuls you gathered? How is it you don't understand that I was not talking to you about bread? But be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees." Then they understood that he was not telling them to guard against the yeast utilized in bread, but against the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Eliyahu, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Creator in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the sovereignty of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he ordered his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the 3rd day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Master," he said. "This shall never happen to you." Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What benefit will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? What benefit will there be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Creator's glory with God's angels, and then God will reward each person according to what they have done. Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." From the Quran, Surah Al-Anfal, 8. Bismillah ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. They ask thee concerning things taken as spoils of war. Say, such spoils are at the disposal of Allah and the Messenger, so fear Allah and keep straight the relations between yourselves. Obey Allah and Allah's Messenger if ye do believe. For believers are those who, when Allah is mentioned, feel a tremor in their hearts, and when they hear Allah's signs rehearsed, find their faith strengthened, and put all their trust in their Lord. Who establish regular prayers and spend freely out of the gifts we have given them for sustenance. Such as in truth are the believers. They have grades of dignity with their Lord, and forgiveness and generous sustenance. Just as thy Lord ordered thee out of thy house in truth, even though a party amongst the believers disliked it, disputing with thee concerning the truth after it was made manifest, as if they were being driven to death and they actually saw it. Behold, Allah promised you one of the two enemy parties, that it should be yours. Ye wish that the one unarmed should be yours, but Allah willed to justify the truth according to Allah's words, and to cut off the roots of the unbelievers, that Allah might justify truth and prove falsehood false, distasteful though it be to those in guilt. Remember, ye implored the assistance of your Lord, and Allah answered you, I will assist you with 1,000 of the angels, ranks upon ranks. Allah made it but a message of hope and an assurance to your hearts. In any case, there is no help except from Allah, and Allah is exalted in power wise. Remember, Allah covered you with a sort of drowsiness to give you calm as from Allah, and Allah caused rain to descend on you from heaven to clean you therewith, to remove from you the stain of Satan, to strengthen your hearts, and to plant your feet firmly therewith. Remember, thy Lord inspired the angels with the message, I am with you. Give firmness to the believers. I will instill terror into the hearts of the unbelievers. Smite ye above their necks, and smite all their fingertips off them. This because they contended against Allah and Allah's Messenger. If any contend against Allah and Allah's Messenger, Allah is strict in punishment. Thus will it be said, taste ye then of the punishment for those who resist Allah is the penalty of the fire. O ye who believe, when ye meet the unbelievers in hostile array, never turn your backs to them. If any do turn his back to them on such a day, unless it be in a stratagem of war, or to retreat to a troop of his own, he draws on himself the wrath of Allah, and his abode is hell, and evil refuge indeed. It is not ye who slew them, but it is Allah. It was Allah. When thou threwest a handful of dust, it was not thy act, but Allah's, in order that Allah might test the believers by a gracious trial from Allah, for Allah is Allah, who heareth and knoweth all things. That, and also because Allah is Allah, who makes feeble the plans and stratagem of the unbelievers. O unbelievers, if ye prayed for victory and judgment, now hath the judgment come to you. If ye desist from wrong, it will be best for you. If ye return to the attack, so shall we. Not the least benefit will your forces be to you, even if they were multiplied, for verily Allah is with those who believe. O ye who believe, obey Allah and Allah's Messenger, and turn not away from him when ye hear him speak, nor be like those who say, we hear, but listen not. For the worst of beasts in the sight of Allah are the deaf and the dumb, those who understand not. If Allah hadn't found in them any benevolence, Allah would indeed have made them listen. As it is, if Allah had made them listen, they would but have turned back and declined faith. O ye who believe, give your response to Allah and Allah's Messenger when Allah calleth you to that which will give you life, and know that Allah cometh in between a man and his heart, and that it is Allah to whom ye shall all be gathered. And fear tumult or oppression, which affecteth not in particular only those of you who do wrong, and know that Allah is strict in punishment. Call to mind when ye were a small band, despised through the land, and afraid that men might despoil and kidnap you. But Allah provided a safe asylum for you, strengthened you with Allah's aid, and gave you benevolent things for sustenance, that ye might be grateful. O ye that believe, betray not the trust of Allah and the Messenger, nor misappropriate knowingly things entrusted to you. And know ye that your possessions and your progeny are but a trial, and that it is Allah with whom lies your highest reward. O ye who believe, if ye fear Allah, Allah will grant you a criterion to judge between right and wrong, remove from you all evil that may afflict you, and forgive you, for Allah is the Lord of grace unbounded. Remember how the unbelievers plotted against thee to keep thee in bonds or slay thee, or get thee out of thy home. They plot and plan, and Allah too plans, but the best of planners is Allah. When our signs are rehearsed to them, they say, we have heard this before. If we wish, we could say words like these. These are nothing but tales of the ancients. Remember how they said, O Allah, if this is indeed the truth from thee, rain down on us a shower of stones from the sky, or send us a grievous penalty. But Allah was not going to send them a penalty whilst thou wast amongst them, nor was Allah going to send it whilst they could ask for pardon. But what plea have they that Allah should not punish them when they keep out men from the sacred masjid and they are not its guardians? No men can be its guardians except the righteous, but most of them do not understand. Their prayer at the house of Allah is nothing but whistling and clapping of hands. Its only answer can be, taste ye the penalty because ye blaspheme. The unbelievers spend their wealth to hinder man from the path of Allah, and so will they continue to spend, but in the end they will have only regrets and sighs. At length they will be overcome, and the believers will be gathered together to help, in order that Allah may separate the impure from the pure. Put the impure one on another, heap them together, and cast them into hell. They will be the ones to have lost. Say to the unbelievers, if now they desist from unbelief, their past would be forgiven them, but if they persist, the punishment of those before them is already a matter of warning for them. And fight them on until there is no further tumult or oppression, and there prevail justice and faith in Allah together and everywhere. But if they cease, verily Allah doth see all that they do. If they refuse, be sure that Allah is your protector, the best to protect and the best to help. And know that out of all the booty that ye may acquire in war, a fifth share is assigned to Allah and to the Messenger and to near relatives, orphans, the needy, and the wayfarer. If ye do believe in Allah and in the revelation we sent down to our servant on the day of testing, the day of the meeting of the two forces, for Allah hath power over all things. Remember ye were on the hither side of the valley, and they on the farther side, and the caravan on lower ground than ye. Even if ye had made a mutual appointment to meet, ye would certainly have failed in the appointment. But thus ye met, that Allah might accomplish a matter already enacted, that those who died might die after a clear sign had been given, and those who lived might live after a clear sign had been given. And verily Allah is Allah who heareth and knoweth all things. Remember in thy dream Allah showed them to thee as few. If Allah had shown them to thee as many, ye would surely have been discouraged, and ye would surely have disputed in your decision. But Allah saved you, for Allah knoweth well the secrets of all hearts. And remember, when ye met, Allah showed them to you as few in your eyes, and Allah made you appear as contemptible in their eyes, that Allah might accomplish a matter already enacted, for to Allah do all questions go back for decision. O ye who believe, when ye meet a force, be firm and call Allah in remembrance much and often, that ye may prosper, and obey Allah and Allah's Messenger, and fall into no disputes, lest ye lose heart and your power depart, and be patient and persevering. For Allah is with those who patiently persevere. And be not like those who started from their homes insolently, and to be seen of men, and to hinder men from the path of Allah, for Allah compasseth round about all that they do. Remember, Satan made their sinful acts seem alluring to them, and said, no one amongst them can overcome you this day, whilst I am near to you. But when the two forces came in sight of each other, he turned on his heels, and said, Lo, I am clear of you. Lo, I see what you see not. Lo, I fear Allah, for Allah is strict in punishment. Lo, the hypocrites say, and those in whose hearts is a disease, these people, their religion has misled them, but if any trust in Allah, behold, Allah is exalted in might wise. If thou couldst see, when the angels take the souls of the unbelievers at death, how they smite their faces and their backs, saying, taste the penalty of the blazing fire, because of the deeds which your own hands set forth, for Allah is never unjust to Allah's servants. Deeds after the manner of the people of Pharaoh and of those before them, they rejected the signs of Allah, and Allah punished them for their crimes, for Allah is strong and strict in punishment. Because Allah will never change the grace which Allah hath bestowed on a people, until they change what is in their own souls, and verily Allah is Allah who heareth and knoweth all things. Deeds after the manner of the people of Pharaoh and those before them, they treated as false the signs of their Lord, so we destroyed them for their crimes, and we drowned the people of Pharaoh, for they were all oppressors and wrongdoers. For the worst of beasts in the sight of Allah are those who reject Allah, they will not believe. They are those with whom thou didst make a covenant, but they break their covenant every time, and they have not the fear of Allah. If ye gain the mastery over them in war, disperse with them those who follow them, that they may remember. If thou fearest treachery from any group, throw back their covenant to them, so as to be on equal terms, for Allah loveth not the treacherous. Let not the unbelievers think that they can get the better of the holy, they will never frustrate them. Against them make ready your strength to the utmost of your power, including steeds of war, to strike terror into the hearts of the enemies of Allah and your enemies, and others besides, whom ye may not know, but whom Allah doth know. Whatever ye shall spend in the cause of Allah shall be repaid unto you, and ye shall not be treated unjustly. But if the enemy incline towards peace, do thou also incline towards peace, and trust in Allah, for Allah is one that heareth and knoweth all things. Should they intend to deceive thee, verily Allah sufficeth thee. Allah it is that hath strengthened thee in Allah's aid and with the company of the believers. And further, Allah hath put affection between their hearts. Not if thou hadst spent all that is in the earth couldst thou have produced that affection, but Allah hath done it, for Allah is exalted in might wise. O Messenger, sufficient unto thee is Allah, unto thee and unto those who follow thee amongst the believers. O Messenger, rouse the believers to the fight. If there are 20 amongst you, patient and persevering, they will vanquish 200. If 100, they will vanquish 1,000 of the unbelievers. For these are a people without understanding. For the present, Allah hath lightened your task, for Allah knoweth that there is a weak spot in you. But even so, if there are 100 of you, patient and persevering, they will vanquish 200. And if 1,000, they will vanquish 2,000, with the leave of Allah. For Allah is with those who patiently persevere. It is not fitting for an apostle that he should have prisoners of war until he hath thoroughly subdued the land. Ye look for the temporal treasures of this world, but Allah looketh to the hereafter, and Allah is exalted in might wise. Had it not been for a previous ordainment from Allah, a severe penalty would have reached you for the ransom that ye took. But now enjoy what ye took in war, lawful and benevolent, but fear Allah, for Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. O Messenger, say to those who are captives in your hands, if Allah findeth any benevolence in your hearts, Allah will give you something better than what has been taken from you, and Allah will forgive you, for Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. But if they have treacherous designs against thee, O Messenger, they have already been in treason against Allah, and so hath Allah given thee power over them, and Allah is Allah who hath full power, who hath full knowledge and wisdom. Those who believed and adopted exile and fought for the faith with their property and their persons in the cause of Allah, as well as those who gave them asylum and aid, these are all friends and protectors one of another. As to those who believed but came not into exile, ye owe no duty of protection to them until they come into exile. But if they seek your aid in religion, it is your duty to help them, except against a people with whom ye have a treaty of mutual alliance, and remember, Allah seeth all that ye do. The unbelievers are protectors one of another. Unless ye do this, protect each other, there would be tumult and oppression on earth and great mischief. Those who believe and adopt exile and fight for the faith in the cause of Allah, as well as those who give them asylum and aid, these are all in very truth the believers. For them is the forgiveness of sins and a provision most generous. And those who accept the faith subsequently and adopt exile and fight for the faith in your company, they are of you, but kindred by blood have prior rights against each other in the book of Allah. Verily, Allah is well acquainted with all things. Gaia na chegou a Arcos 42 a 55. Amongst the 5 nations and their posterity there shall be the following original clans: Great Name Bearer, Ancient Name Bearer, Great Bear, Ancient Bear, Turtle, Painted Turtle, Standing Rock, Large Plover, Little Plover, Deer, Pigeon Hawk, Eel, Ball, Opposite Side of the Hand, and Wild Potatoes. These clans, distributed through their respective nations, shall be the sole owners and holders of the soil of the country, and in them is it vested as a birthright. People of the 5 nations, members of a certain clan, shall recognize every other member of that clan, irrespective of the nation, as relatives. Men and women, therefore, members of the same clan, are forbidden to marry. The lineal descent of the people of the 5 nations shall run in the female line. Women shall be considered the progenitors of the nation. They shall own the land of the soil. Men and women shall follow the status of the Moor. The women heirs of the Confederate mastership titles shall be called Royane, noble, for all time to come. The women of the 48, now 50, Royane families shall be the heirs of the authorized names for all time to come. When an infant of the 5 nations is given an authorized name at the midwinter festival or at the ripe corn festival, one in the cousinhood of which the infant is a member shall be appointed a speaker. He shall then announce to the opposite cousinhood the names of the far and the Moor of the child, together with the clan of the Moor. Then the speaker shall announce the child's name twice. The uncle of the child shall then take the child in his arms, and walking up and down the room shall sing, "My head is firm, I am of the Confederacy." As he sings, the opposite cousinhood shall respond by chanting, "Yene, yene, yene, yene," until the song is ended. If the female heirs of a Confederate master's title become extinct, the title right that shall be given to the masters of the Confederacy to the sister family whom they shall elect, and that family shall hold the name and transmit it to their female heirs. But they shall not appoint any of their sons as a candidate for a title until all the eligible men of the former family shall have died or otherwise have become ineligible. If all the heirs of a mastership title become extinct, and all the families in the clan, then the title shall be given by the masters of the Confederacy to the family in a sister clan whom they shall elect. If any of the Royane women, heirs of a titleship, shall willfully withhold a mastership title or other title and refuse to bestow it, or if such heirs abandon, forsake, or despise their heritage, then shall such women be deemed buried and their family extinct. The titleship shall then revert to a sister family or clan upon application and complaint. The masters of the Confederacy shall elect the family or clan which shall in future hold the title. The Royane women of the Confederacy, heirs of the mastership titles, shall elect 2 women of their family as cooks for the master when the people shall assemble at his house for business or other purposes. It is not beneficial or honorable for a Confederate master to allow his people whom he has called to go hungry. When a master holds a conference in his home, his wife, if she wishes, may prepare the food for the Union masters who assemble with him. This is an honorable right which she may exercise and an expression of her esteem. The Royane women, heirs of the mastership titles, shall, should it be necessary, correct and admonish the holders of their titles. Those only who attend the council may do this, and those who do not shall not object to what has been said, nor strive to undo the action. When the Royane women, holders of a mastership title, select one of their sons as a candidate, they shall select one who is trustworthy, of benevolent character, of honest disposition, one who manages his own affairs, supports his own family, if any, and who has proven a faithful man to his nation. When a mastership title becomes vacant through death or other cause, the Royane women of the clan in which the title is hereditary shall hold a council and shall choose one from amongst their sons to fill the office made vacant. Such a candidate shall not be the far of any Confederate masters. If the choice is unanimous, the name is referred to the men relatives of the clan. If they should disapprove, it shall be their duty to select a candidate from amongst their own number. If then the men and women are unable to decide which of the 2 candidates shall be named, then the matter shall be referred to the Confederate masters in the clan. They shall decide which candidate shall be named. If the men and the women agree to a candidate, his name shall be referred to the sister clans for confirmation. If the sister clans confirm the choice, they shall refer their action to the Confederate masters, who shall ratify the choice and present it to their cousin masters. And if the cousin masters confirm the name, then the candidate shall be installed by the proper ceremony for the conferring of mastership titles. A large bunch of shell strings, in the making of which the 5-nation Confederate masters have equally contributed, shall symbolize the completeness of the Union and certify the pledge of the nations represented by the Confederate masters of the Mohawk, the Oneida, the Onondaga, the Cayuga, and the Seneca, that all are united and formed into one body or union called the Union of the Great Law, which they have established. A bunch of shell strings is to be the symbol of the council fire of the 5 nations Confederacy, and the master whom the council of fire keepers shall appoint to speak for them in opening the council shall hold the strands of shells in his hands when speaking. When he finishes speaking, he shall deposit the strings on an elevated place or pole, so that all the assembled masters and the people may see it and know that the council is open and in progress. When the council adjourns, the master who has been appointed by his comrade masters to close it shall take the strands of the shells in his hands and address the assembled masters. Thus will the council adjourn until such a time and place as appointed by the council. Then shall the shell strings be placed in a place for safekeeping. Every 5 years the 5 nations, confederate masters, and the people shall assemble together and shall ask one another if their minds are still in the same spirit of unity for the great binding law. And if any of the 5 nations shall not pledge continuance and steadfastness to the pledge of unity, then the great binding law shall dissolve. 5 strings of shell tied together as one shall represent the 5 nations. Each string shall represent one territory, and the whole a completely united territory known as the 5 nations confederate territory. 5 arrows shall be bound together very strong, and each arrow shall represent one nation. As the 5 arrows are strongly bound, this shall symbolize the complete union of the nations. Thus are the 5 nations united completely and folded together. Thus are the 5 nations united completely and enfolded together, united into one head, one body, and one mind. Therefore they shall labor, legislate, and counsel together for the interest of future generations. The masters of the confederacy shall eat together from one bowl, the feast of cooked beaver's tail. Whilst they are eating, they are to utilize no sharp utensils, for if they should, they might accidentally cut one another, and bloodshed would follow. All measures must be taken to prevent the spilling of blood in any way. There are now the five nations confederate masters standing with joined hands in a circle. This signifies and provides that should any one of the confederate masters leave the council and this confederacy, his crown of deer horns, the emblem of his mastership title, together with his birthright, shall lodge on the arms of the union masters whose hands are so joined. He forfeits his title, and the crown falls from his brow, but it shall remain in the confederacy. A further meaning of this is that if any time any one of the confederate masters choose to submit to the law of a foreign people, he is no longer in but out of the confederacy, and persons of this class shall be called they have alienated themselves. Likewise, such persons who submit to law of foreign nations shall forfeit all birthrights and claims on the 5 nation confederacy and territory. You, the 5 nation confederate masters, to be firm, so that if a tree falls upon your joined arms, it shall not separate you or weaken your hold. So shall the strength of the union be preserved. A bunch of wampum shells on strings, 3 spans of the hand in length, the upper half of the bunch being white and the lower half black, and formed from equal contributions of the men of the 5 nations, shall be a token that the men have combined themselves into one head, one body, and one thought. And it shall so symbolize their ratification of the peace pact of the confederacy, whereby the masters of the 5 nations have established the great peace. The white portion of the shell strings represent the women, and the black portion the men. The black portion further is a token of power and authority vested in the men of the 5 nations. The string of wampum vests the people with the right to correct their erring masters. In case a part of or all the masters pursue a course not vouched for by the people, and heed not the 3rd warning of their women relatives, then the matter shall be taken to the general council of the women of the 5 nations. If the masters notified and warned 3 times fail to heed, then the case falls into the hands of the men of the 5 nations. The war chief shall then, by right of such power and authority, enter the open council to warn the master or masters to return from their wrong course. If the masters heed the warning, they shall say, "We will reply mañana." If then an answer is returned in favor of justice and in accord with this great law, then the masters shall individually pledge themselves again by again furnishing the necessary shells for the pledge. Then shall the war chief or chiefs exhort the masters, urging them to be just and true. Should it happen that the masters refuse to heed the 3rd warning, then 2 courses are open. Either the men may decide in their council to depose the master or masters, or to club them to death with war clubs. Should they in their council decide to take the first course, the war chief shall address the master or masters, saying, "Since you, the masters of the 5 nations, have refused to return to the procedure of the Constitution, we now declare your seats vacant. We take off your horns, the token of your mastership, and others shall be chosen and installed in your seats, therefore vacated. Should the men in the council adopt the second course, the war chief shall order his men to enter the council to take positions beside the masters, sitting between them wherever possible. When this is accomplished, the war chief, holding in his outstretched hand a bunch of black wampum strings, shall say to the erring masters, So now, masters of the 5 united nations, hearken to these last words from your men. You have not heeded the warnings of the women relatives. You have not heeded the warnings of the General Council of Women. You have not heeded the warnings of the men of the nations, all urging you to return to the right course of action. Since you are determined to resist and to withhold justice from your people, there is only one course for us to adopt. At this point, the war chief shall let drop the bunch of black wampum, and the men shall spring to their feet and club the erring masters to death. Any erring master may submit before the war chief lets fall the black wampum. Then his execution is withheld. The black wampum here utilized symbolizes that the power to execute is buried, but that it may be raised up again by the men. It is buried, but when occasion arises, they may pull it up and derive their power and authority to act as here described. A broad dark belt of wampum of 38 rows, having a white heart in the center, on either side of which are 2 white squares, all connected with the heart by white rows of beads, shall be the emblem of the unity of the 5 nations. The first of the squares on the left represents the Mohawk Nation and its territory. The second square on the left and the one near the heart represents the Oneida Nation and its territory. The white heart in the middle represents the Onondaga Nation and its territory. And it also means that the heart of the 5 nations is single in its loyalty to the Great Peace, that the Great Peace is lodged in the heart, meaning with Onondaga Confederate masters, and that the council fire is to burn there for the 5 nations. And further, it means that the authority is given to advance the cause of peace, whereby hostile nations out of the Confederacy shall cease warfare. The white square to the right of the heart represents the Cayuga Nation and its territory, and the fourth and last square represents the Seneca Nation and its territory. White shall here symbolize that no evil or jealous thoughts shall creep into the minds of the masters whilst in council under the Great Peace. White, the emblem of peace, love, charity, and equity, surrounds and guards the 5 nations. Should a great calamity threaten the generations rising and living of the 5 united nations, then he who is able to climb to the top of the tree of the great long leaves may do so. When then he reaches the top of the tree, he shall look about in all directions, and should he see that evil things indeed are approaching, then he shall call to the people of the 5 united nations assembled beneath the tree of the great long leaves, and say, A calamity threatens your happiness. Then shall the masters convene in council and discuss the impending evil. When all the truth relating to the trouble shall be fully known and found to be truth, then shall the people seek out a tree of Kahonka'agona, and when they shall find it, they shall assemble their heads together and lodge for a time between its roots. Then, their labors being finished, they may hope for happiness for many days after. When the Confederate Council of the 5 nations declares for a reading of the belts of shell calling to mind these laws, they shall provide for the reader a specially made mat woven of the fibers of wild hemp. The mat shall not be utilized again, for such formality is called the honoring of the importance of the law. Should 2 sons of opposite sides of the council fire agree in a desire to hear the reciting of the laws of the Great Peace, and so refresh their memories in the way ordained by the founder of the Confederacy, they shall notify Adadoro. He then shall consult with 5 of his coactive masters, and they in turn shall consult their 8 brethren. Then should they decide to accede to the request of the 2 sons from opposite sides of the council fire, Adadoro shall send masters to notify the chief masters of each of the 5 nations. Then they shall dispatch their war chiefs to notify their brother and cousin masters of the meeting and its time and place. When all have come and have assembled, Adadoro, in conjunction with his cousin masters, shall appoint 1 master who shall repeat the laws of the Great Peace. Then shall they announce who they have chosen to repeat the laws of the Great Peace to the 2 sons. Then shall the chosen one repeat the laws of the Great Peace. At the ceremony of the installation of masters, If there is only one expert speaker and singer of the law and the pacification hymn to stand at the council of fire, then when the speaker and singer has finished addressing one side of the fire, he shall go to the opposite side and reply to his own speech and song. He shall thus act for both sides of the fire until the entire ceremony has been completed. Such a speaker and singer shall be termed the two-faced, because he speaks and sings for both sides of the fire. I, Diganawida, and the Union Masters now uproot the tallest pine tree, and into the cavity thereby made we cast all weapons of war into the depths of the earth, down into the deep under earth currents of water flowing to unknown regions. We cast all the weapons of strife, we bear them from sight, and we plant again the tree. Thus shall the great peace be established, and hostility shall no longer be known between the 5 nations, but peace to the united people. Alhamdulillah, Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim, Allah Wabham, Dao Kudao, Fei Chong Dao, Min Kaming, Fei Chong Jah, Rastafari. Deus nos da Kies and Chalice, Santo Fakito Namatum, Vaheguru Sanam. Baruch Ata Elohim, Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Barei Pari Hagafem. Amen. Baruch Ata Elohim, Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Kasanu B'Mitzvotav V'Tzivan L'Suk B'Dvai Torah. Amen. Kyrie eleison, Sivamastu Savajkatehi, Sabe Sata Bavantu Sukitatam, Vagabiyam, Aquaba, Upendon Amani, Fakiri Nasanami, Chintadam Panami, Labor of Mem, Romanjicum, Ubuntu Shabon, Fakitkam. Session, Kamostanida, Damo Argato, Pilama Yellow, Wakatoka, Tokadoko Shingun, Gomanagan. God, we thank you for all the blessings. Ata Jami Yatafanami, Madom, Aho, Om Shanti, 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 Amen. Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, Mir. Satnam, Jai Janendra, Zaijan, Adios, Jai Chaklis, Sayonara, Salangwa Pyongwa, Metta Samadhi, Eshwaso Agape Ki Erini, Esimpe na Asamuje, Kele Ufred, one love, peace, happiness, liberation. All thanks and praise to the Most High, Elohim Jah, Rastafari.